And then if you've got any questions, either put your hand up or leave them to the end or put them in the chat and we'll catch up with them. Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Right. So what we were going to do first was we're going to go through the new workbook, and hopefully I can share my screen if this will work. Okay. Here we go. Can everybody see this workbook?
Yeah.
No? Right. We'll try something else. Try something else here.
Helen, I can see it.
No?
I can see it. I can't now, but we could see it. We could see it.
Just put it on and give it a minute.
Okay, here we go. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this new FBA whip. In Promar, we've always got to find a way to shorten things. So this was designed to make sure that instead of all the sheets that we would give out for the year-end information, this was a booklet that would go out to everyone. And one of my colleagues, in fact, a few of my colleagues put together this information that would go to make it easier to make all the information that was in the one place for when it came to giving us or put together excuse me, year-end information. So the first sheet starts with client name, client code, which is 4-digit number, your year-end date, who your analyst is, and the number of hectares you farmed. Now you'll see that what will happen is if we were to go to the crop record, it works out the total farmed area, because that's one of the checks we need to make sure that what's farmed is the total, and then what's owned, what's rented, and then your crop acreages, sorry, or hectareages, if there's such a word, add up to that. So this is why the workbook was designed. And what it does, it goes through. You'll have seen some of these forms before. It goes through the cow record, the crop record. Now the other livestock one, I had to put this in myself, the young stock, dairy and beef, because some of my colleagues in Cheshire and further down the country, they don't always have the same young stock and beef that we do here in sunny Scotland, so that's why that one's in. The CO2 questions is the carbon footprint questionnaire, which Laura's going to talk about, and we'll leave it to the last. Any stocks and stores, and then any notes of any additional information required by your analyst. So the cow record is, again, pretty self-explanatory. It tells us the month, and that month, that formula there is calculated from the year-end date. So the system works that out for us. So that's saving us time as well. The number of heifers that have been transferred in, which we can get from Milkminder, but it would be great if you could fill this out for us. The number of calves that were born, calves sold and calf deaths. And then just goes through the whole year. Is that okay for everyone? Then on the next tab, you'll see the young stock dairy. So when we talk about young stock as far as Promar are concerned, we're talking about dairy replacements. I would like to call this dairy replacements, but I think I'll have to wait a wee while before we can get there, because that's really what it means. So if it was a beef heifer that was being sold, that's going to go under beef, but young stock dairy is really your dairy replacements. So if you know that there were 14 heifers transferred in to the dairy herd in April, then it should link. You'll see the 14 out. So that links to these two, so it automatically brings that in there. Okay, so it links. If you lose any of the formulas, please don't worry about it. We can sort it. So, and then that would be all any young stock dairy would be all the ones that you had. When you see transferred in are your calves that are coming up that have been born that year and are going into dairy replacements that were born in April. Does that make sense? Right.
Yes.
If MD's got anything, shout. Keep the questions for the end, whatever. So that's what the young stock dairy would be. Hello.
Hi, Helen, can you hear me? Yeah. Back to the first sheet. Heifers transferred in, and you've got
Yes.
the bought column next to it. If you bought a couple of heifers through the months, what column does it go in?
We would probably, if you were buying heifers, we would put them in the young stock dairy,
Right.
depending where they are to the calving. But this is where
If they're just like fresh calved and you bought them in, what do you do?
They go on the cow one there, because if they're newly calved, they're classed as a cow, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
So,
Right.
so put them in,
Right.
in there.
As soon as they've calved, they're classed as a cow. Right, we count it
Yeah.
like that.
As far as we're concerned, yeah.
Right.
So so that would be the young stock dairy. So what should happen is when you transfer out all your heifers out, that'll link into the cow record page, and then that'll show us all that. We can get all that information from Milkminder from the information you put in, but it would be a nice way to fill that out. Some of you may want to fill that out as you're going along per month. I can think of a couple of people who probably want to do that as they go along. Some people might not. It's just entirely up to you guys. And then we go into beef, and it's the exact same thing here. The beef calves would be any that you were so the transfers in would be any calves that were born that you're keeping as beef animals. I know a lot of you sell them before they get to that stage, but this is where we would put them, and then keeping a note of any. It's difficult whether you want to go through and put the sales in individually per month, or whether you're quite happy because you are all self-input clients. You can see the sales on your data sets, so you can tie up the sales to this if you want, and it would make sure that we're reconciled when we come to do the year end, because for me anyway, this takes me the longest, is getting all the numbers of animals reconciled. Whether it's also a thought for you, and some of you maybe already do it, so my apologies there, is print off BCMS as at your year end date, and then there's absolutely no query about how many animals are on farm as at that date. And I appreciate that only works for your cattle, and I know there's a few people have got a few sheep and some pigs as well. So, but for the cattle, that seems to take us the longest, and the cattle numbers are important as far as your cost of production is concerned. So then we move onto your other livestock tab, and that would be for your sheep or your pigs. And it's easy just to add in other tabs if you want to do that for your sheep or for the pigs as well. I think I've only got one client who's got pigs, as far as I can think. Is that right? So that would be that page. Do you got anything else they want to ask? No.
Helen, could I ask a quick question, please? It's Karen here.
Oh, hello, Karen.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Can you just go over quickly again the two extra columns that are on this sheet, the daily replacement retained and bull calves retained on page 1?
What one? Sorry.
Cow.
Right, so what I'll do is I'm going to clear that information out of there. So that would really be what was going forward. So if you so say the total number of calves born in the month, Karen, is 30, and you sold 5, had 5 deaths. Maybe there was, at this point in time, you maybe don't know. So your dairy calf replacements would be really Holstein, or I'm making a generalisation here, Holstein Friesian heifers that you were heifer calves, and then any bull calves that were retained. So if you were keeping any beef calves or any heifer steers. Now, it may be that you don't want to do that for every month. It may be it's just as simple to do it at the end of the year, Karen, if that makes sense. So you know that you had, say, 260 calves born, how many were sold, how many died, and what your replacements are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily it's not what's been sold in that month of April, it's what's been sold out of those that were born in April. So you might not sell them till May or June, but you'd actually put the figure in there because they were born in April they're an April calf. I think sometimes that's where the confusion happens with dairy replacements and beef.
For me personally, I think it's actually better to wait to the year end and see how many
Yeah.
you've got left at the year end, and then
See,
once
that's massively where I get. See, I do this every month. I just do this line every month: sold, died, whatever. And as you say, last year got completely bamboozled because obviously we put a lot of bull calves away to butler and different things, and they were all in the wrong month because I had to put it on the month they were born, not actually the month that we sold them. So that seems to be an extremely complicated issue for me personally anyway. But anyway, we'll just have to get around it.
I think that the best way is, right, how many beef calves have I got at the year end? If there's 60 beef calves at the year end, then I think it's actually easier to do it that way. I think the heifers transferred in is easier to do it per month, but I think keep the number of calves born, calves sold, and then calf deaths is important for us as well. And it's probably getting the combination right.
So Helen, are you saying then, so if a calf is born in May, so April, right? So say there's 6 heifers, 2 bulls and 2 beef. They're all born in April, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the heifer, black and white heifer calves stay where they are. The bull calves, say they're sold in May, and the beef calves are sold, say, in August. Where do you put all of that then? How do you split that up and put that in?
That's where I think, and Krisha, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I think you're better doing it at the end of the year.
Yeah. If you do it at the end of the year and you print off your report for BCMS, obviously you know how many have been born. At the end of the year, when you look on BCMS, you've actually got your dates of birth. So all I do is then go, oh, I've got 4 left that were born in April, 5 left that were born in May, and I would just then put those in the columns, and then you'd know how many had died off your NFS go. Obviously it's different up in Scotland, isn't it? And is it same? And then your calves sold are obviously is going to be the difference. I would do it that I would leave it till the end.
So really,
you're asking for us to fill in the days, although is that the May, June, July, August though? Looking at this is what we're looking at, right? So we're looking at the cow record. So you're looking for May, June, July. So you're looking for all the numbers for that month as well. That's why
I wouldn't be getting too caught up in those 2 columns. So this is a workbook that we've been given for all our clients, and some clients it will be easier to work for doing that. Was that Mary that was speaking there, was it?
No, it's Elaine Goldie.
Elaine, sorry.
No, you're fine.
So I think it's actually better to wait to the end. It might be slightly you've got slightly different. You've got the 2 hares. It'll be harder for you guys, but I think it's actually. See these 2 columns, I wouldn't get too caught up in them. We're more concerned that the total number of calves that you've born, the calves sold total, which you'll be able to see from your FBA and your deaths, and remembering that the deaths affect your carbon footprint, so we need to be very realistic. We need to be making sure that the deaths are correct. Right, is that okay for everyone?
Yeah, right. So you're saying don't worry so much then for what this is here that you're showing us just now. It's more at the end of the year.
If those 2 columns, L and M, if they make things too hard for you, then that's fine. If they help, great. If they don't worry about it, because really when it comes to the bottom line, we care about is the total.
So it's really more the total you're worried about.
Correct. And you can use this.
The month.
Yeah. As far as we're concerned anyway, and I think what Krisha said there about using BCMS, we need to get a number in an age range, so we need to get the number in the age range. So if you can give us that, so how many animals you've got in the 0 to 5 and the 6 to 11, then that's right. But also remember that if last year you had, say, 50 animals in the 6 to 11 range, unless you've bought any calves, you can't have 60 in the next 6 to 11 in the 18 to 23 range. So just remember that we need to be realistic about these and looking at those numbers. Does that make sense?
No, say that again.
All right.
I'm going to be honest, sorry, you're going to be hours through this today.
Not at all. Do you want me to come up?
Just about it. No, just that last wee bit. Say it again.
So for instance, hold on a wee minute. Is there a piece here? Right. So see, can everybody see that? So okay, the dates are a wee bit.
Yeah. So you said if there was 50 and 60 to 11, you couldn't have 6.
So look at that. So I would be expecting, so in that year, there's 28 in the 0 to 5. And the next year, they should go to the 12 to 17. So if there was 28 there, unless you had any, you should very rarely have any more in the 12 to 17 unless you're something in that age range.
Because there's more chance of deaths or I suppose, or purchasing type thing.
Or sales,
Yeah, unless you've sold some or they've died.
And these, and we're passing on this information because this is what will happen when we do a year end and we do it as best as we possibly do that, and you've given us the information, and then somebody goes, but that doesn't look right. From that point of view, these are the kind of things that will be checked when the year end goes into the office from checking. So what happens is, as far as the process is concerned, we get all the information from you guys, put it in, it goes for checking to the office, and it also goes to one of the consultants for them to check it. And then they would come back, and these are the kind of things that they'll be coming back with. So that's,
okay.
And the beef's exactly is exactly the same. You know, these are the kind of checks that they'll be doing. Right.
Okay. Cheers, Helen.
No worries.
Helen.
Helen, can I just ask a quick question?
I'm hearing two voices.
Graham?
Graham.
Can I ask a quick question, Helen? The calf deaths, say the calf was born in May and it dies in June, what column do I put the calf in?
Well, we're not really, as long as they're correct. If
It's at the end of the year.
Yeah. Because that's one of the other checks we would do. We would check to make sure that what's in your national fallen stock invoice is roughly what's now. Okay, there might be some timing. So that the cow deaths, calf deaths, young stock deaths, beef deaths, we would check to make sure those totals add up roughly.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Somebody else asked something. No.
Hello?
Yes, Helen, it's Karen Torrance here again. You're just about to ask the same question as Graham because but we'll just leave it because I don't really understand. I don't understand the logic of it, but I do when you're putting it into different groups.
Karen, just print me a list off on the 31st of March and I'll sort it.
No.
Don't worry.
Yeah, because you say if you work on the totals at the end, it should all work.
Because it's never ever going to tie in, Karen, is it? Because
No.
it's what Graham said there. But you had an animal that was born in April, but it died in May. That's never going to tie in. So what you're better doing is just giving us those totals, maybe forgetting about the bits at the end. Calves sold in the month, calf deaths, and then because, and also we can get what age they were when they died from the costs from national fallen stock.
Yes, well, that's right, because the day they died, they get picked up.
And also how much national fallen stock charge you for it, so we know roughly what age they are from that. So yeah.
Right. Okay.
Somebody else. There was somebody else.
Worth another enterprise. I was thinking about if some people are selling a lot of the freshly calved heifers, that can go against your replacement rate. It puts your replacement rate away up in the costings at the end of the year. And that being started up like another kind of enterprise for selling a lot of freshly calved heifers.
Laura, I'm going to hand this one to you.
Well, I think there's a few people have done that this year, and Chris is thinking about
doing that.
I'm
think
thinking about it. I got no point. I'll hold my hand up. We got no points for our cost of production because we sell a lot of newly calved heifers. Obviously, my husband runs a pedigree herd. He buys a lot of dairy semen. He also tests a lot because so our costs for that are included. So my year end is actually November. So I'm actually this year going to try and we have done it with a customer and we think it's worked. That was a trial last year that I think I'll probably do it on my own farm this year.
No, you get penalised. That's what I feel. You get penalised for doing that, but it is another enterprise.
It's another it's part of you. It's part of your business, isn't it? It's part of our business.
I feel you are getting penalised for it, and you shouldn't.
Yeah, we have a lot of young stock on farm.
And I don't penalised for that, but I don't think you should if you're seen to be making money out at the end of the day.
Well,
I think it goes worse. I think it penalises you more for your carbon footprint. It depends. I suppose it depends because they take the replacement rate, and the higher that gets over, you get penalised for breathing. You're right, Elaine, you do. I think that's where the issue can be from Alltech's point of view. So they take that higher number across your herd, and you get penalised for that. But I definitely think that there's something to be said if your replacement rate looks like, well, if your heifer number is getting, towards 1 and over, and that is because you're selling, 10% of your young stock, I think you should set up a separate enterprise, because it's all the costs that go to it, that they're all allocated to your cost of production. So I think you really should consider it. It puts a level playing field across everybody. I think it makes it a little bit fairer I don't think people should be necessarily penalised for rearing young stock and selling pedigree young stock.
Because you also get penalised if you bring heifers onto your herd, don't you? So if you're actually using your own replacements, you think in one way it would be better. So you penalise. It's a tricky one, but you're right. I think going forward, I think we will set up new enterprises for them. We did it on a trial last year with one farmer and it worked. So before we rolled it out to everybody else, I wanted to check first that it did work.
Okay.
So
if there's anyone who is thinking that that's the route they want to go, then just let us know and we'll get that sorted. Okay. Right. Crop record. That's too wet here, isn't it, to crop with all these folk anyway? Forgot not everybody's in sunny here, sure are they? Right. So
chucking it down here in Lancashire.
It's dry. Anyways, moving on. Right. So this is the crop sheet, and when we talked about that earlier, you'll see the difference there. So what they've done is we've put the total farmed area, which is picked up from the introduction there, and then we put in the number that was owned and the number that was rented. So the system has shown us that there's a difference there, which is a difference. So that would throw that out. So when it comes to year-end time, tell us the amount that's owned and the amount that's rented. What we also check is that if you are renting land, that you're paying for it, that it's going through the business, and we'd see that under rent paid. The crop year, this is where things get a bit confusing for me as well. And so this is the crop year. So your year end, and the majority of you are spring year ends. So that would be the crop that was really harvested the previous year, as it were. So it was harvested at the back end of, so what we'll be doing at the 31st of March will be crops that were harvested in the back end of 2020. And it's sometimes difficult when you're putting sprays and manure and stuff that's going to be harvested next year. But there's a lot of you are very good at putting in your descriptions, sprays for winter wheat, say that'll be harvested 2021. So the most of you are quite good at that, and if that works for you, good. So what we would ask you to fill out on this form here is the crop. So if it was grass, it's grass. And as far as grass is concerned, Promar take into account anything other than has been cropped. So for instance, even if it's like rashes or rough ground, that as far as Promar's concerned is grass. So okay, you maybe there's maybe 50 hectares of silage, but then what other hectares make up the rest of the grass? And sometimes we'll just work that out ourselves. Then you would go down and put in, so if there was spring barley, put that in there. And then say winter wheat, whatever you've got here. And then keep a record of the seed that you have purchased for that, put that in there. Then the fertiliser that has been applied to that, and then what you harvested. So what you harvested as far as the crop was concerned, as in the grain, and then any straw, and then what's happened to that straw. Does it get fed to the livestock? Do you sell some of it? How much is in store as at the year end? The grain that's fed, if the grain is sold, I know there'll be some of you will sell your grain, things like that. So keep that on here. Because the fertiliser allocation is very, very important for your carbon footprint. So we need to be making sure that we're getting an accurate record of what your fertiliser use is. And whilst, you know, it's very much a come and go process as far as us and you guys are concerned. So for instance, we'll know that if your fertiliser you bought at a certain point in time, I know a lot of people buy them kind of December time, we know that fertiliser, whilst it's maybe no sitting in store and sitting in the barn, it's sitting in store as far as the year end's concerned, because it's been applied to a crop that's not going to be harvested until the next year. Does that make sense? Hello?
Helen, I've got a question.
Who's that? Is that you? Who's speaking there?
Helen Russell.
Oh, hi, Helen.
Hi. See with the graph, is it? I just don't normally put the silage down. Is it all grass you want?
What I would ask you to do on this form, if you want, Helen, is put the grass and how much silage you cropped, and then put down below it anything that was just like grazing ground or rash or anything else, because what has to happen is we need to make the total acreage balance. So if you had 50 hectares of silage and then you had 10 of spring barley, 10 of winter wheat, but the farm actually totals 100, the rest would be grass as well, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Although it's cropped off it.
So the likes that in the crop bit, it doesn't matter because we don't do barley. All we have is grass and silage. So you would basically break that down to like your grass, how many acres of grass for grazing, etc. And then put down silage, and then round bale silage and that kind of thing. Is that the idea of that there?
Yeah, or you could actually put it all in a runner if you wanted, as long as you tell me like grass and the total hectare, as long as the total hectare's total, then that should be okay.
So it wouldn't matter if it's...
You can split it out if you want.
But it wouldn't matter if we split it out though, as long as we tell you, look, it's grass and then you divvy it up to what silage and...
Well, as far as...
And bales.
We don't really divvy the grass bit up. The grass will go as it's the total, as it were.
Right, okay, so grass is grass.
What you've cropped, and also we'll also be looking for what silage is in store as well. But remembering that the silage, it's the silage that was cropped by the end of September 20 for 2021. I'm going to hand you over to Laura now. She's going to do the bit about the carbon footprint questionnaire, because I know that people have probably got a lot of questions as far as that's concerned. Is anybody got anything that I've not explained very well, or you want me to go over again? Please shout. Or if it comes to it and there's something you go away and you use the form and you think, no, I'm not happy with this, then please just either phone me or email or give us a phone and we'll sort something out. Okay, right. Laura, do you want, I'll just keep sharing my screen, will that do?
Yeah, that's great. Do you want to just, well, the top questions I think are all quite self-explanatory. The reason I thought I would talk to you all about it is because I know it's Alltech and all the carbon footprinting is something that stresses everybody or a lot of people out. And I think probably one of the biggest things and one of the biggest reasons that everybody struggles with it is because they actually don't really know what the relevance are of the questions. It's a little bit like the dark arts of Alltech, and there's lots of smoke and mirrors and it's all very confusing. So I thought I would just give you a bit of an idea of what relevance the questions have to your carbon footprint. And I think the most important thing I could say is there's not a right or wrong answer for any of this, because I know lots of people will say, should I say my cows are high yielders? Should I not say they're high yielders? Is it going to penalise me if I do? And the answer is not necessarily. None of it. It's all very relevant to your system. So the first question that lots of people, they're not really very sure why you get asked is the cubicles question. And that is purely because Alltech have a system whereby they work out how much bedding material you're likely to use for a certain number of cows. So if you've got them loose house, they would assume there's probably a lot more straw involved. If you've got cubicles, then the assumption would be that there would be sand or sawdust. So that's the only real reason they ask that question. The NVZ, that's relevant to your fertiliser. Really out of the top bits, that's all that really matters. Like I say, nothing there really pertains directly to your carbon footprint. Helen, go down a little bit, please. So this bit at the bottom, up a wee bit, up a bit, down a bit. So this bit here is the bit that's the most relevant to your carbon footprint, is or is quite relevant, is the whether or not the animals are housed. So the reason that they ask when they're turned out is they want to work out, basically they want to work out the manure calculation for how much muck you're going to produce, how much slurry you're going to produce if they're in, and how much slurry, how much muck on ground there's going to be if they're out. And there's basically a bit of a separate calculation for that as to how much ammonia goes into the air, how much nitrogen goes into the air with it being in or with it being out. So all it is really just a calculation of whether they're in or whether they're out. The high yielding, low yielding is more to do with the assumption of how much food that they're going to eat and how much methane they're going to produce through that food. Again, the reason they want to know when they're out is so they can work out a dry matter consumption when they're out. So from the bit down the bottom where it says how much forage have you produced, it works out how much dry matter your herd are consuming. So say you put none of your cows go out, nothing goes out at all, then the assumption would be that all the forage that you have in the table at the bottom, that is the only dry matter that your cattle across the whole farm are eating. So they work out from that, they'll work out how what your yield is per hectare of dry matter and your carbon footprinted in that. Now, if you put further up the top that you put that half your herd, your low yielders go out, say, your high yielders all stay in, some of your dry cows go out, etc., etc. For each one of those columns, there's a slightly different dry matter intake per day, just a standard dry matter intake a day. So what it'll do is it'll calculate how many cows were out for how long and how many kilos of dry matter your grass is producing. So what it is really is to try and work out from the hectares that you farm how productive it is, and how many tons of dry matter per hectare you produce. So that's what that's all about. And I know it looks a little bit complicated and a lot of people wonder why they're being asked that. But that's why I'm saying there really is not a right or wrong answer, because if you were to say that your cows didn't go out and you were to underestimate the amount of silage, say, or all the forage you'd produced, it actually goes against you a little bit, because it makes it look like you're not farming your ground necessarily terribly economically. You're not producing a lot of dry matter, so there's really no reason not to fill it in or underestimate things, unless maybe you I suppose the other important thing is you have to make sure you take your beef numbers out if you're running stock on the field. If you're fattening or you're finishing, it's important to take that out, because then that also is taken away from the carbon footprint, because all they're interested in is your young stock and your dairy cows. They're not interested in anything else. So while I would say not to take too much out, not to overestimate it, it is important you do take it out. So that's the 101 and what it means. I'm sure some of you might have some questions, but that's the basics of it. There's lots of other things that affect it, but that's the basics of that form, why we ask those questions and what they relate to. Does anybody want to know anything else about it? Everybody's sick of hearing about carbon footprinting, I think.
Laura, it's Karen Thornsey again. This is obviously a question that I should know the answer to, but what merits a high yielder and a low yielder?
I suppose it depends on different herds. I would say normally anything over 10,500 litres a year would be a high yielder. Some people would say it's slightly less than that. I would say probably anything in Scotland, probably anything over 10. But that's what I would class a high yielder. Certainly from I've been doing all lots of Arla calls, all the carbon checks for Arla. And from an Arla point of view, everything over 10,500 litres is classed as, that's the kind of benchmark for a high yielding cow.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody want a quick 5-minute coffee break before we go, 10 minutes before we go into the next bit? What? Or shall we carry on?
My kettle's on, but I'm happy for you to carry on.
I'll just keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I think it's my turn next, isn't it? Okay. Right. So if I Okay. Can you see a demonstration business? Has it come up?
Nothing's come up yet.
No.
Okay.
Oh.
Could see it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right. What we've done, this is just a demonstration business because I wanted just to explain to you what we kind of look for when we check through your data, just so that when we come to do your year end, you'll know what kind of information that we require. Now, different secretaries do it differently. We all have a routine of how we do it. Laura and Helen will probably do it slightly different to how I check your data, but I'll go through how I check it, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. So your data will come through like this. Obviously it has your name on the top, and usually all your data sets are already set up, so it's not a check that we need to check, but normally we check that the address is on, If you've got a consultant with Promar that's on, who the farm analyst, whoever that is, that you've got an email address, mobile, and obviously your business hectares. So, but as you've been on it for quite a number of years, that is something that won't really have changed. So, okay, right. So when I get a data set, I usually I'm a bit funny and I work backwards. So I usually start with the balance sheet first. Right. So you might just have to bear with my internet. I've got a few children online, so it might be a bit slow.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
It will work. This is where we need fibre. We have it in the village, but we can't get it down our lane. Okay, right, there we go. So this is the front screen. So usually I work by, as I say, I can be a bit funny, I go backwards. So I'll look at the long-term liabilities. So these are the loans that are on this account. As you can see, that one, there is no movement, but it's also a minus. So to me, that's already bringing alarm bells that perhaps it's not been set up correctly, or it's finished and the payments from a previous year have been put in the wrong year. If we look at that one, so that's a whole year. We can see that there's 12 months payments that have come through for that. Now, obviously, there'll be interest on this loan as well, and we'll need the interest to put on. So you can either do it yourself, if we can teach you how to do that, which is pretty straightforward, or as long as we have the balance of your loan, we can then check the difference between what you have down on your statements and what is here is actually the interest. I will show you how to put the interest on in a bit. Now, this is another loan. Now, obviously, this is a data set I've never seen before. It's one somebody's put together. But this is a loan that's been set up, but it's just ringing alarm bells to me here that there's minuses on to a GPS, which just makes me wonder if perhaps it's been entered incorrectly, and perhaps that should be private drawings instead of private mortgage. And when it's been entered, it's just been entered wrong. So that's that one. Then I'd look at your private and just check whatever income has come in. And your drawings, just check that what's in there is private and it hasn't been put in error. And the same with your tax. Obviously, this says PAYE here, but I think the supplier's just been put in wrong. But that would be something that we would actually write on the range checker, because if somebody else was checking it, they might say, well, it says PAYE, should it not be PAYE? But if we've already asked you that question, we could say the supplier was put in the computer wrong. If you're not a VAT client, we can change that. But if you are a VAT client, obviously your VAT's been filed and we can't go in and change that. And then the same for pensions. And then we also then look at your current liabilities, which is your loans. Obviously, there's only one on here. That's showing us, to me, this data set's not been checked for the year before, showing us a minus, which means that possibly could be interest, because it looks like it's finished and it should be zero. Or if it's still got a balance on, it would have a positive amount, but it's got a minus amount on it. So that to me looks like it's interest and they've not cleared it off. So that's what we'd do with that one. So we'd look at your profit and loss. So we've got your sales. So obviously sundry income, that's usually scrap metal or anything that perhaps isn't allocated. And then we just work our way through, check your cow numbers, check that they've got a quantity in, because obviously we've got 90 there. We want to make sure that the sales all pull through. If you've got quantities missing out of here, it will throw your stock figures out. So we just check through, same with the calves, that we're happy with those. Beef, etc. So that's what we do with those. Obviously you've got sheep, that's the same. Milk sales. So we check that we've got obviously 12 for the month so that these figures pull through. We also check the dates here, that they're on the last day of the month if it's invoice based. Obviously if it's cash based, the date will be the date that the invoice, the money goes through your bank. But as long as they're consistent, all these figures then pull through a report. If a date was slightly out, when this is pulled through the report, your milk figures would be out and we'd then have to go in and change it. We check that there's a quantity and that it looks consistent, like they're consistent. If you suddenly that said 0.504, we'd think, oh, that quantity is not correct. Obviously you've got your grants. It's a nice single farm payment, isn't it, that one? Your receipts, contracting receipts, rents. Obviously we do the same for the purchases. So office livestock, we check that that's all milk recording, that it's office for the cows, semen. Now I always got told we put quantities on for semen, so I'm not quite sure. They've probably done this as a test. So usually we check that you've got your straw quantities. That your bedding is always put in tons. So we just go down and check that these were all tons. Usually you can tell by looking at the price if something wasn't quite right here. Chemicals. They're all chemicals. A foot bath there. And then sundries livestock obviously is anything that touches the cow or the calf. So we just check through all those. That's pretty straightforward. Obviously you've got your crop sundries, your vet and medicine. Sprays we usually check are allocated to a crop. So that forage maize, winter wheat, whole crop, grass, etc. Quantities in there. Fertilizer is usually the biggie, right? So if this, for example, this fertilizer here is going on a few crops, what we tend to do then is put it to general, and then we will go in. I'll show you where we go afterwards to allocate it to the fields. Seeds, we have to make sure that they're all allocated to a crop, or if it's a seed that you've purchased at the end of your financial year, we put that into store for the following year. When we put it into store, we have to ensure that it has a crop, a stock name, and then that will pull that through. Feed's the biggie. So obviously we want to check that all the feed is entered correctly. So winter blend, got a quantity. They obviously all look very similar. I also do another check for feed. So I might note down what the name of the feed is. So that's winter blend. So what I also do as another check is I go into items. Put in description there, winter blend. Back, ensure my date is the financial year I'm looking. So obviously this is 1920. View items. So that is everything that's been allocated to winter blend. And I can quickly check there that the costs are all very similar. If suddenly that was put into tons, for example, like that, I would be able to see from looking at there that that's been entered incorrectly, and then we'd just go in and change it. So obviously go back into that. Okay, so we work our way through all those, and then we then do the same with the overheads. So we check, obviously wages are regular. If they're paid monthly, we check there should be 12. Obviously there's something yearly charge paid monthly, that's a negative amount, so I would, and that's on a sales invoice, so I would question what that was. 12 NI payments, pension costs, they're monthly, or they look like they're two lots. Saying that pension cost there, the pension cost here obviously should be for the regular wages, not your private pension, so we would check there in the right place, and we just gradually click our way through these. Obviously fuel and oil is one we have to check for quantities, your gas, oil and your heating oil there, that you've got your quantities in. Obviously we check electric. I suppose depending on what, like here we have 4 different electric bills for four different bits, so I have like ones every quarter and ones every month, but roughly check that you think the same numbers are in. And we'd also so we'd work our way through each of those, and we'd also look at the front of this as well. So for example, if say your electric last year was 38,000 but this year it was only 3, we would question why that was a lot less. There could be a genuine reason for it. You could have been overcharged in the previous year and they've corrected it in this year. And we have to note that down when we send it in, so that when somebody else is checking it, they then don't ask us the same questions. Obviously you've got your loan interest. So that's a negative. So I'd question why that was in there, but that loan didn't look right, did it, before? So one way of putting your interest on, if you wanted to do it yourself, is you'd enter it as a cash analysis payment. I'll put it under miscellaneous for now, but whatever your bank was, say it was Barclays, or we'd just put the end of the year, day before the year end date, and we would find your loan that it belonged to, and we would just put interest. It would be a minus, say 12,000 against your loan, and then it would be interest on your long-term bank loan would be interest, like that, and that will be 0. And then that would mean that then in the interest section on the profit and loss, we would have your interest, and on your loan, the loan should then balance with what you've got on your loan statement. So if we go into there, and go into interest, there you can see interest long-term bank loan, £12,000. So generally we work our way through anything that we think that doesn't look right. We usually make a note, as you know, and then we'll ask you questions and we'll get you to check quantities and things like that. We also then, obviously, your business details, you've got your hectares there. We also then check that those hectares match here as well, what you've rented, what you own. And then we also, obviously, we'll get these off the work booklet that we've just talked through. And then obviously we then check that they match here as well. So that it all matches together. We also check that you haven't allocated something to general that perhaps should be allocated to an enterprise like your cows or your young stock. So how we check that is we go into there, press select, and we'll pick the farming year that we're doing, which I'll be 19, come up with general, press OK. And obviously we've got things to purchases. Oh, it's picked everything up. Bear with me. Let me redo it. Swatch. Check it's not. Not playing. Clear it. Might be easier doing it that way. So this will just check that you haven't allocated something to the previous year, or if you've got your new financial year open, that it's allocated to your new year there. So obviously there's nothing in overheads, so that's correct. No, these are all so if something had come up in overheads there, click out of that. Okay. Should just pick general. We can also move this on just to make sure as well that you haven't put anything in the new financial year when you change the date that belongs to your enterprise 19. These are just... Okay. Anybody got any questions?
No, I'll look good and I'll send you a message just reminding myself what it was later on. Because I forget. You know me, Krisha.
The only other biggie that comes up at the end of the year as well, which you could probably do monthly when you've done, if you do using it for VAT, or quarterly, is to check your supplier list. If you were doing it monthly when you did your VAT, you could change the date to whatever monthly VAT you're doing, and just check on your supplier list that there isn't anything that's over. It depends how often you pay, but the ones that can be over 60 days, you might have missed paying an invoice, or you might have put the invoice on but then put it on as a cash analysis payment, so it's on twice. And this just gives you a chance to check. If I change the date to the year-end date, easier to explain. It just keeps this. So can you see? So that's obviously a recent invoice, but then we've got like £62.40 there. So it could be correct. You could have, you know, you may still owe £62.40, or you could have overpaid, or you could have paid a credit charge. It just gives you another chance to look at your. Not your
it's a lady here. Sorry, where are you in looking at that? Because I do that quite a lot, actually, putting in an invoice and then think that's not done and put in a cash analysis.
Yeah. So
one of my faults.
If you look in
suppliers,
yeah.
Right.
And when you press aged, anything that maybe in your over 60, you may have paid, but you could have put on as a cash analysis payment, or you might have something
okay.
on account, which to me, if you've got something on account, you may have an invoice missing. So you may have paid, they may have sent you a statement and you may have paid £240, but it's showing up here as not right. So if you then click into the actual, you can see what the invoices are. So you can see that that's that one that's been paid there. That's that one. Sometimes it just gives you a quick check to. I don't think we've any issues with all yours, but you're all pretty good. And another way to check as well, if you think you've paid something twice, is if you go into Daybook, you can put the amount in. So for example, if you knew it was £50, you could put £50 in and it would come up here. So then you'd be able to look at them and see, oh yeah, that got put on as an invoice, and then I've put that on as a cash analysis payment, and then all you do is put a credit note on to get rid of the invoice. You can change the date, you can check on checks, pay slips.
How do you delete a supplier for a company that's maybe retired or you don't work with anymore? Because I'm sure we've got quite some that can go.
There is, if you bear with me, there. If you go into supplier and customer setup, I think you can tick them there at the bottom where it says finished. And that would stop it coming up on your list.
Right, okay. I think I need to go through my list and give them a clean out.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Jean. When you've been using it for over 10 years, you have a big list, don't you?
Well, I think we're just 5, but certainly some could go. Thank you.
I don't actually think you can delete them, can you? Because they'll need it for like historical purposes.
Yeah, you can't delete them, but if you press finish, it will, you know, when you go in there and you enter it, you're entering a new one. If it's finished, it won't show up in that list, but it'll still be there in the background because you've obviously used it previously.
Tricia.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I get cut off there, and now that you're back on, I have no screen, so I didn't actually see what you were doing there, and that's something that's really annoyed me for ages, is how to get rid of some of these.
Oh, sorry. Do you want? Can you see it now?
I'm not getting the screen. I'm seeing you, but I've lost my screen. I don't know how. Do you know how I get back what you're actually showing?
Just have I stopped share? No, it's still sharing, isn't it?
I lost the connection and I had to click back on to get back in.
Ooh, showing your sorts now. Okay, so it's not showing up, is it not?
No.
Right. Okay, so you just want to know how to. If I talk you through it.
Yeah. I'll just scroll down some notes.
Yeah. So if you go into setup. At the top, and then suppliers and customers.
Yeah.
Supplier customer setup. It will give you a screen, and right at the bottom there's a little box that says finished. If you tick that and save it, it will still be there in the background, but it won't be there on that list.
Right. That's super, thanks.
I've just had a wee look at this while we're on, and I don't see a box that says finish. I've got report, delete, new, edit, close, and help. Oh, finished, right? Sorry, I found it. Right. And the first one on my list is retired, so perfect, I can try it.
Try it, just try it. See if it works.
Save. Okay, thank you.
I think one of the questions that we had as well was about putting loans on when you purchase a new tractor. So I'll show you how to. So if you were on an invoice base and you bought the tractor, you obviously put the tractor on. So I'll just put it under miscellaneous supplier for now. Put the date. So we bought this on the 31st of May. It's a March data set, isn't it? So 31st of May 19, for example. Okay. So we've bought a tractor. That. So obviously you right click to put a new subcode of what your tractor's called. So we could put John Deere 350. I don't know if that is one. Reducing balance. Obviously it's 17.5%. Right, John Deere 350. Say we've paid £50,000 plus VAT for that. Then we've traded one in. So if you actually, because usually what you find from the supplier is you'll get a purchase invoice and then you'll get a credit note. And you can put them on separately, but sometimes we find it's easier to put them on the same screen. So if you put the new tractor purchase and then you're trading one in, so you find capital tractors, say you're trading the JCB in, you could type in trade in JCB and say you got 20,000 for that. So that would be 36,000 in theory that you owe. Okay, now usually what you have to pay is usually the VAT. So we know that the VAT's 6,000, so we put that at the top, and you're taking out a loan for the 30k. Okay, so I should have put the loan on first, but we can go back and show you. So for now we'll stick it under loan other. and £30,000 is going to go on a loan. So you can see what we've bought, you can see what we've sold, and you can see that we're putting 30k on a HP loan. So we'll just save that for now. Want the JCB to be written off? Yeah. What's it doing? Okay, right. So we need to set up the HP loan. So if you go into setup, heading codes, look for current liabilities, loans HP. These here will be all the loans that you may have. So you just call it loan, whatever you've bought. So we've called it the John Deere. You carry on the next number, so that'll be MR401. Obviously, it's not vatable, it's other current liabilities, and it's a HP loan, and you save that. Now, obviously, I should have done it the other way around, and we should have set the loan up first, but if you did, you can do it vice versa. So if we just go back into that invoice, and obviously we want this tractor to go to the correct tractor. So we've now created a loan called Loan John Deere. So if we change that to Loan John Deere, that 30,000 is now set up as a loan. Okay, so if we go into the balance sheet now, sorry, it's a bit slow. There we go. Okay, and we go into current liabilities. We can, on loans HP, we can now see that we've set up that loan for a John Deere, and that's our 30,000. Now, obviously, each month we're going to pay £750 for our John Deere plus interest. So if you set that up as a cash analysis of payment, and again, we'll do it just miscellaneous supplier. So we know that we bought the tractor in May. We know the first payment's going out in June. So at the 30th of June, we know we've got £750 repayment, and we're paying interest of £20. So then we find the interest HP. So what I tend to write in there is the repayment or capital. You can put capital and put interest in there, so that's £20. So we're paying £770 a month. Oh, okay. And then we can create a template, put 770. You could call it John Deere if you wanted to, if you've got a few, and then save that. And then all you do each month when you check your bank is, I know you know all this, but it's just a bit of a recap. You can use it there, and that's your next payment. And then obviously the payments go to the loan account, and the interest we then find on the HP in the profit and loss. So if we go into there, it's a bit further up. Bank charges and interest.
At the moment,
Is it loan interest?
let's see how it goes.
And it wasn't just themselves to consider. Samira and Yoni were settled at school and with
there for their interest. There. We can see that's our interest for our loan. Now, I don't know whether this will be of any interest to you, but it's just something that we look at when we're at the year end, just to make sure that we think the bedding allocation's right, or you're happy with your vet allocation. If you wanted to move some things, if you wanted to compare it to the previous year. So on the front page, there's something called farm accounts. You go into livestock, and at the top you could pick thinking about it. Okay, so you could look at dairy young stock, and we could pick this year, which would be 2020. I'm working in what year ends we're doing at the moment, so we're on 19, aren't we, because it's a March one. Just bear with me. Okay, so if we click into there, you can see that what you've purchased this year, livestock sundries. We can see that we've put 69 tons to bedding, but you can compare it with last year. If your stock figures are similar and you've done similar things, we can check to see if we think you've allocated enough bedding or you've allocated enough vet. But it might be something that you're interested in, just to compare each year. Okay, so we change that to 18. Okay, right. So purchases last year. This is one way of checking that your feed might be correct. So last year you put 75 tons of bedding. This year you've put 69. So they're roughly, last year you had 290 head, you've got 245. So you can roughly say, yeah, maybe, yeah, that looks right, that doesn't look right. You can check your feed. So you might see in here, obviously milk powder is separate this time, whereas it used to be in with compounds. So you can roughly see, yeah, we've more or less fed the same. But I check this because there could be something really glaring that, oh, we haven't actually put any feed to young stock, but last year they got fed this. It's just another way of checking. Okay, so
Sorry, Krisha, where was that? Because I had to go and see to a child and scream at them there.
It's not easy with it when they're at home. Farm accounts livestock.
Right, okay.
You put what you want to look at, and if you press the comparison and then change the date to the previous year, you can look on year and just see if it's, you know.
Right, okay, yeah, that's fine. So you can put in whatever you want to see.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a good check to, like, you might miss putting some bedding to the young stock, and it just you might think, oh, actually last year they had 100 ton of bedding and this year they've only got 10.
Yeah.
And that way we check that. Okay, now before I mentioned that when we put the fertilizer into store, obviously you can, if you fill your stock sheets in, we can do this for you, but there is a way of checking if you wanted to have a go yourself. So on the front page, obviously there's something called stock, and in here we've got everything from that you had in your previous year in stock and everything that you're going to put in stock here. So obviously we look for fertilizer, which is there, and we can see that we've put 2288 there. We've purchased that, but it's not all going on grass, it needs splitting up. So we've purchased it, but we have used it all. So what you can then do is you can allocate it out either at the year end. You can put the year end date, well, the day before the year end date, that you've put so much to grass there, so much to maize, so much to wheat. Or if you knew what date you'd do it, you could actually put the date that you'd actually put the fertilizer on. So you could say, right, we've put 3 ton of that on there, and you can do it that way. And what this then does is, that's what you've purchased. If you've sold any, it would come up there. That's what you've applied. This is what we've got left at the end of the financial year. Or if you haven't got any bags left, you can go in again, put another date, or you can, if you're using the year end date, you can just go in and put all of them under one. Obviously last year they had 80 ton of fertilizer left. They've bought another 84. That's what they've applied throughout the year, and this is what they've got left. That's another thing that you don't have to do this, because you'll have filled your forms in, but I just thought sometimes it's just nice to know different things that are on the computer. Cash, that's another one that we check. This always has to be to 0. So you only tend to have maybe things in here. So you go into other, unallocated. As you can see, there's nothing there. So it's obvious that all that's obviously been allocated out. The only time you probably really see things in here is on account payments. So you might put your electric bill on, say, for £2,000, but each month you're paying 125. That'll come up there that there's unallocated cash. That's the customer one, that's the supplier one. Can you see? So that's, but we always have to get that to 0. But we can correct that for you. That's not, we just do a journal to get rid of that. Helen, Laura, is there anything else do you think that we look at when we're checking?
No.
No. Has anybody got any questions, or would they like us to show them how to do something?
Yeah, see, can I ask, it's Jean Payton here.
Hi, Jean.
Hi. See, like setting up like a loan or like doing some of those checks, is there any chance that we could get like a wee instruction book for doing that, because I only, well, I'm sure most of us maybe only do these things now and again, and I tend to forget the time I go to do it again how I did it the first time.
Yeah, we could. We actually have a checklist that we look through. So what I'll do is I'll adapt it. And we'll put something together for you and emailed out to you all, and then
just so that when we go, like say we do buy a new tractor, then we don't have to bother secretary, we can have a go at it ourselves, because I do tend to forget, even though I sort of jot main points down. When it comes to doing it, you always worry that it's
unless
not,
you're doing
you've not
it
done
all
it
the
fully.
time. It's not often you buy a tractor, really, is it?
No, definitely not. Know the price of them. Well, that's great, thanks.
Yeah, we'll put something together.
Okay.
The idea of today was to just, because obviously you'll all be aware that Laura's going off to be a consultant, which is fabulous news. So Helen and I'm obviously coming back up to Scotland to help Helen look after you all. But we think it's going to work really well, because Laura obviously is going to do the consultancy side of it. She understands FBA. She'll probably do take back visits with you, go over your data. If there's any queries, Laura can change them without them having to come back to us to do. Just little things. We just think it'll work really well, because obviously we have a deadline that we've got all these year ends to get done, and we want, we don't want to make a mess of your data. We want it to be the best it can, and we just thought if we gave you a few tips and things of what we look for, because I know you're all mad keen and you'll love doing it yourself anyway, that it will help us at year end time, really. So you're not being abandoned by Laura. She will still be there. And obviously I've met quite a few of you, and I have done quite a few of your year ends. So between Helen and I, we will get them all done. Yeah. So any more questions? No, Laura?
Yeah. A question, but it's not like on that. I'm going back to carbon footprint. It was something we meant to ask. Is it okay to ask about that?
Of course it is, yeah.
Right, we get penalised for buying soya to do our home blend, but what annoys Hugh is people are buying blends with soya in them, and a lot of blends do have a percentage of soya in them. So what can be done about that? The fact that we are mixing up our own, we're being penalised, but the one through as a blend, like, don't get any penalisation for that.
So Liz, where's that? Sorry, where you're getting penalised from an Alltech point of view, you mean?
Yeah. Our carbon footprint, because we use soya, they said like that's penalising us.
Okay, because people that are using so what the way that Alltech should be separating the blend out is when they are speaking to people about the blend, the question should be asked whether or not that blend is or is not soy free. So you should be getting level pegged against other people unless there are people that are saying that their blend is not, has no soya in, and it does. People should be saying that they have got soya in their blend, which should put you on a level peg against them, especially if you're mixing your own blend with homegrown forage. Is it? Do you think it has? You got a few points against you for it?
Well, wait a second till I see you here. Just what they actually said at the time. What were we being penalised for the soya?
Well, it's with the carbs. We're buying soya straights, and it's to do with your. I honestly don't know how we were being penalised, but we were being penalised because we're buying a straight compared to buying a blend that maybe hasn't been notified that there's soya in it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, Hugh. I think essentially you shouldn't be getting penalised any more than somebody who's using a soya-based blend. But the difference would be whether or not there's a conversation about that with Alltech. But you certainly shouldn't be getting penalised, especially because you're mixing your own blends yourself. I would have to have a look at. I would have to have a look at your Cubis to see, but you shouldn't be. But I know a lot of people are a bit worried about it because it actually says on the invoice, doesn't it? It says, you know, you've got it like the straight is soya, whereas it doesn't say blend invoice that your blend is.
A local blend, it's classed as a blend, but it's also
Yeah.
soya in it.
So I think the assumption is, and I can't talk for all because I don't see it. I know from other carbon footprints that I do. The assumption is that most blends are soya based, unless somebody says otherwise.
Right. Okay.
But I know what you're saying.
We're the same as the Nielsen's. We use straights all the time, and soya is an issue for your carbon footprint. I'm behind them 100%.
There's a couple of things that they are going to change going forward. I think it's only talking about it. So just to kind of give you the heads up, one of them is when you are putting your feed name in, you know, sometimes it will have a percentage next to it, like 18% or 19%. They're wanting you to put that percentage in. But obviously that's only going to start from your new financial years. So that's something they're talking about. Obviously, Laura, you might know more about why that is.
So that's from a carbon footprint point of view as well. It's about herds that are feeding a big proportion of really high protein concentrates. So, you know, not your 16-18%, the ones that are maybe buying a lot of 40%, because that goes against your digestion in your carbon footprint. That's why they're wanting to know that.
Yeah. And the other one, which probably is, they're not asking us to do it, but I've started doing it on a few of my farms, but that's more because we're Arla, so it might not be relevant to any of you up there, is when you put your electric in, we're actually putting how many units of electric that we've used, and that's purely because we've got Arla Garden questionnaire to do, and they ask you how much electric you use, and it just saves you rooting out the bills, but that might not be relevant to any of you up there, so that's just something else. So, okay, Laura, have you anything else to add, Helen? Or
I think so, not if anybody, unless anybody's got any questions.
No. It's been nice to see you all anyway. That's what I'm missing. I don't mind being stuck at home, but I'm missing seeing people.
And if anybody has any questions after today that, you know, that comes up, then please just give us a shout.
Yeah.
And it's certainly looking as though the year end will probably be done in the same way we did them last year and doing them remotely. So unless things change dramatically, then we'll certainly be doing off-site.
Makes it a bit harder as well.
Somebody's got their hand up.
It's me. It's Mary. Can I just clarify then that there's only going to be 2 of you doing the year end for the whole of Scotland?
I'm going to potentially be doing some year ends too.
Yeah. Laura is still there in the background. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we didn't want, because obviously I've met quite a few of you, and of what's happened in the past, we didn't want to throw you a new secretary, especially at this time of year. So we thought it would be easier if I came and helped do the Scottish one, and Emma's worked for me in Lancashire does some of mine instead.
Okay.
Just so that we just thought it'd be easier for you not to have to get used to somebody else and a new face and their way of working, and so we're hoping that's all right. Mary,
Okay.
you've got me again.
No, that's fine. That's okay. But you know, you have a lot.
Yeah. Don't worry. I did manage last year, but yeah, a few of mine are going to go to Emma. So,
Okay.
Yeah. We are
right. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll muddle through.
Yeah. I get up early, Mary.
Right. No, that's fine, Trisha. That's okay.
Yeah. We'll see how we go. If we when we get through it, we can review it. But we just know it's such short notice to recruit somebody.
Yeah.
Then for the trainer, Emma knows quite a lot of my clients anyway because she's been with me. So she's going to do those. Even if she does the bulk of them and I just check them, we might do that, and then I'll do the Scottish ones.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah. And Laura's also there as well. So regarding your feed and your fertilizer and things like that, she can always look at that side of it as well. So yeah.
Right.
We'll get it between us.
Okay.
Okay. Right. Well, obviously we finished a bit earlier. We didn't know how long it was going to take today. Thank you all for coming. It's been lovely to see you all, and hopefully you'll go away with a few tips and things. And if you have got any questions, you can ring any of us or email any of us. We're always there. You know, we'll answer at any time. So yeah. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Carol.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Everyone. Bye. Bye.